Thank you for joining us in our Experiencer interview series. My name is Susan with the UAP Medical Coalition. I am a mental health provider. This is not a therapy session and is intended for use in educating mental health professionals on the challenges faced by UAP experiencers. All medical references are for informal purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this video belong solely to the speaker and not necessarily to UAP MED, its employees, volunteers, or affiliates. Some of this content may be triggering. Viewer discretion is advised. So joining us today is Erin. And thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Could you start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Sure. My name is Erin Wilson. I know that I'm usually known as Erin Montgomery, but I was just married about almost 2 months ago. So this
Oh,
is
congratulations.
new name for me as well. I am a marriage and family therapist here in the town of Roswell, New Mexico. I work full time in the community as a therapist, working with children, all the way up to seniors and things like that on all sorts of different levels, like anxiety, depression, trauma, especially.
Sure.
Yeah, but I'm also a psychic and a shaman and work on healing and energetically and doing readings and things like that in my off time, as well as also running a small business, or at least my husband and I are trying to get a business off the ground with the radio station, online streaming radio station being the center of it right now. So all sorts of hats that I
Wow.
wear right now. Mm-hmm.
No, that's incredible. And I understand that you are a UAP experiencer as well,
Yep, that on top of everything else.
on top of everything else. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that, your UAP encounter or experience.
Well, it's not just one; it's throughout my entire lifetime, and it is generational for me. I would be at least third generation. I know my children are fourth.
Wow.
Yeah, so my grandparents both had experiences. My pretty sure my father has, even though he doesn't speak too much about it, other than sightings of ships in the sky. I have my aunt had experiences, my cousins have had experiences, myself, and now my children. So this is, lifelong and generations long, and who knows how far back it goes. We just don't
That's
have that information.
prior to your grandparents.
Right, right. I wish I had been able to talk to them about it, but they were gone by the time it started to really percolate in my head that this was important, and even understanding that I had these experiences my entire life. It wasn't until I was about 19 years old when it started to dawn on me exactly what had been going on.
What was going on at 19?
Well, it was interesting. I was in college at NMSU, and um I decided to, I've always been interested in UFOs and the paranormal and things like that. And there was a speaker there about, research that was happening in the UFO field. And I thought that would be really cool to see. The speaker was Stanton Freeman. I didn't know who
Oh,
he was at the time. Of course, now I do. Um, so this would have been 1994 or so. I was 19 years old, as I said. And I was completely fascinated with everything that he was talking about. However, in that speech, there was like a switch that went off, and I went from being interested and excited about what he was talking to utter terror. And I left that talk being afraid to even look in the sky. Of course, it really stunk because my boyfriend at the time and I had walked from our apartment over there, so I had to walk in the dark home, and
wow.
it took me years to be able to look back up the stars because I was afraid of what I was going to see. Um, that having been said, memories started to come up. Having remembered like floating down hallways when I was a child and things like that, and bizarre things that have happened to me throughout my life. Like people talk of missing time. I've had added time where I would get home before I had left and my watch would be off and things like that. And so none of it really made a lot of sense. I knew I had some psychic abilities, of course, at that age, but I never correlated with anything else. And it took me until I was in my 40s to be able to, really face and say, okay, yes, this is what has happened to me, and seek out the help of a hypnotherapist. Um, and I did that after really quite terrifying experience that I had. And I do want to emphasize that not all of the things that happen with UFO or UAP contact is scary. And it's definitely not all bad, but some of it can be pretty horrific. And so it
It's,
was after one particular experience that I sought out help.
it sounds like you've had both, like both scary and I mean, positive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It runs the gamut. I like to tell people that there's like three categories of experiences that I've had. One are loving and learning environments and very caring, perhaps even healing. There's some that are really scary, but not inherently bad, just, foreign and new. And then there's, well, alien. And then there's the really scary, yucky, traumatic things that have happened.
Yeah. Can you talk about any of those that you're comfortable with?
Oh, sure. I have like there's so many different ones. It's hard to like narrow down what it is that I need to focus on exactly in a talk like this. But like the reason why I sought out Yvonne Smith is who I work with
Uh-huh.
for hypnotherapy. But right before that, I had had an experience where I had been in bed and I woke up being taken through the wall and I was in some sort of strange gurney contraption and I woke up just being moved through the wall underneath the window and I thought to myself this was very bizarre. There was an entity there that I was used to, a gray type of creature, and I thought, okay, if she's here, I should be comfortable, and I kind of blacked out. And the next time I came to, I was in excruciating pain across my abdomen. I tried to sit up, found I was strapped into what seemed to be a cot, not even like a surgical table. This was a cot, and I knew that something strange was going on, and definitely not normal for my usual experiences. I was able to tell that there were many different people in cots around me, a lot of them in pain and crying. I um I have had two children at this point in time, so I knew what labor pains felt like, and that's what I was experiencing. Upon like looking down towards my feet, I saw that there were two gray alien types, a little bit taller than what I would say would be like a typical gray, quote unquote. And they did remove a fetus from me, very small, like hand size fetus. And as I'm calling out for help, I'm seeing that there's this man walking around, man being a human, military type garb, um, but also in it like a lab coat, and he has a clipboard, and I'm calling out for help, like, hey, can you get me out of here, whatever. And he walks by me, kind of glances at me, but then he goes on. And I think out of that whole experience, what was the most traumatic was the disregard of
Mm.
that soldier or whoever it was, right? And I kind of blacked out again. I don't remember anything else that happened, but in the morning upon waking, my face was swollen from crying so much. I had the my eyelids and across my nose had little broken blood vessels all over, so it looked kind of spotted, which happens to me when I cry really, really hard. And I did have handprints on my inner thighs and things like that to indicate that, yes, I did have this horrible experience. And after that, I was not sleeping well anymore. I would miss work because I'd be so tired. I was having these paranoid feelings. If I fall asleep, something bad is going to happen. All of these things is very typical for somebody with PTSD. And so that's when I decided I had better go get some help. And I didn't really know who else to turn to. I had been in contact with Yvonne before, and so set up a time to work with her. And never having been hypnotized before at this point in time. And as she explains to me what to expect and how the whole thing was going to work, she asked me, "What is it that you were looking for here?" And I said, "I want to resolve the trauma. I want to go to the source of the trauma and fix the trauma," assuming that my mind was going to take me to that night and that experience I had. But that is not where it went. I went to like 7 years old in my regression. I was 7 years old and being taken out of my bedroom by 3 gray entities and up through the ceiling. I could like actually feel my molecules passing through the molecules of the wood and the what is that? I can't even think. Sheetrock and all of that stuff onto, up into the sky into a ship. And I was taken into a room that had a chair very similar to a dentist chair. One that can lean you back, and I was strapped into it. I got really nervous at this point in time. The 3 entities, little gray guys, were trying to keep me calm. And then this other being walked into the room, and it was very, very tall, insect-like, very thin arms and legs. And I came unglued. I'm a 7-year-old in this situation and absolutely terrified. And I remember the tall being telling the little ones that if you don't get her to calm down, you're just going to have to take her back. And very typically in these experiences, what happened to me was the entity got very close into my face. I was able to calm down. And after I calmed down, the really tall insectoid, I would assume this is a mantis type being. I don't know exactly what he was, but he inserted into the roof of my mouth this little gelatinous biological mass into the roof of my mouth, and then quickly left the room. And I was taken out of the chair. I looked down. I was holding the hand of one of the beings and looking down at the earth below, and thought that was lovely, and then returned to my bed. All of this being recalled in hypnotherapy. But then, upon coming out of hypnosis, Ivana asked me, "How do you feel about that?" I was like, "Well, I guess I'm not crazy," because I had some of those memories popping up as I went through my 20s and 30s, though I knew something had happened like that. But she also told me that, "I want you to know that I have heard 2 other people tell me the same story about the insertion of that object into the roof of the mouth in that position." And so that really helped solidify it down. Like, okay, no, this is really happening.
So it gave you some validation.
Yes, definitely.
Did you ever seek any medical help? I know you
No.
said you but did you like a
Yeah, no, I've never really sought any medical help for the issues that have come to pass from these experiences. I think mostly out of fear. Um, I'm in contact now with other therapists who are familiar with the phenomenon, if not being experiencers themselves. And I am very glad that the amount of people that are understanding is growing.
yes?
I think due to the nature of what happened to me at 7, I really have a hard time going to the dentist. I struggle to trust doctors, and I think that is probably it's probably very normal. But it's been something that I've had to combat for years, decades.
Yeah. Well, do you have any concerns like for your mental health or any lingering signs of trauma?
Sometimes, most of the time, I'm going to say it's mostly under control. Any trauma that trauma symptoms that I have now, I would attribute more to like domestic violence in my past than um, than actual ET contact. It's like I have gone from, trauma around the contact to accepting it now, and even seeing alliances and things like that in my life. I'm okay with their presence often, and so only when something really difficult, I think, happens in contact do I see a resurgence of those symptoms.
Mhm.
Granted, I also cannot sit and watch like a movie that is about abductions. I won't do that. It's too much for me.
Yeah. You mentioned you have psychic ability. How is that related to UAP, or is it?
I believe it is directly related. Now, I don't know if it's because I've had contact that I do have the abilities. I don't know if it's cultivated in family lines. I am not sure how exactly that works, but I think a lot of contactees would agree with me that once you are exposed to these things that are outside the normal five senses of human experience, it expands your ability to pull in information from the universe around you. And in so doing, you're even more prepared to handle what is happening, which could be trauma related, but it can also just be expanded knowledge of life in other directions. Like I could feel if an entity was to walk in the room, it would change. I could feel the change in the air. I may not be able to see them, but I could feel that they are there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned that you're in contact with other mental health professionals that are um, starting to appreciate this whole UAP encounter and experiences.
Mhm.
Uh, how are they? How do they react to you as non-experiencers?
I think that most of, like, again, I guess it's in like categories. You've got the ones that are fully embracing and understand and probably are experiencers themselves. Those ones that are confused but willing to learn, and then there's the ones that just think that there's just something inherently wrong with us who go through this, like psychosis or something like that. I'm pretty sure I'm not psychotic. Pretty darn sure. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. Those who are experiencers, of course, are very open to this. Those who are also empathic or have psychic abilities themselves understand it a lot easier than those who don't. Um, I have had my own experiences with, I've only told one therapist about these experiences, and after that, I didn't see her again because of her reaction. And maybe it was just me being a little bit too quick to pull the trigger if I'm not going to do this anymore, because she said something about us having a disorder or something. I'm like, well, besides PTSD, there's not really a disorder here. So um, I don't know.
But
It is really hard.
well, I can imagine that that would be incredibly vulnerable to come forward to medical or mental health professional and say, "Hey, this has been going on," and then to be received with being branded with some disorder. I
Right,
mean, that was incredibly invalidating.
right. That's how I took it, and I didn't go back, and I haven't, and I won't go see her. In talking with the supervisor that I've worked with in the past and told him, because he was actually my boss at the point when I published my book about experiences. So he's seen everything that I have gone through and understands. And he said, I don't care. You're not the craziest one on staff, which was really nice to hear at the time. But telling him about my experience, and he said to me, how can she learn if you don't go back and talk to her about how you feel in her response to what you've been going through, and so how is she going to learn? And I thought, yeah, I should probably go back, but I haven't.
Yeah, that would be tough. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I understand the point, but I could also see your reluctance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And aside from therapists, have you shared any of these experiences with friends or family?
Oh yes, a lot of the people that I am around understand that we have really weird things that happen here. A lot of the people that we associate with, anyways, have strange things that happen. So, um, and so, but I also live in Roswell, so it's almost like it's just normal.
I
Um,
yeah, I suppose Roswell of all places.
Right, right. It is, it's known, and sometimes it will come up in conversation, or I don't know. I think that we're just surrounded by a lot of people that understand or are tolerant of, or are just okay with, just okay with, being who we are. If that makes sense.
Your experience in that was people were largely accepting and supportive.
Right. I have actually had no negative um, impact except for that one experience with the therapist
Uh,
coming out and talking about what I have gone through.
uh-huh. Well, and I think that's probably, and you could speak to this better than I, but a big reason why people don't come forward to professionals or friends or family is the fear of how they'll be received.
Absolutely, absolutely. And even, the book that I published, which goes through kind of the transformation from being traumatized to being accepting of my experiences, I titled Dirty Little Secret because I didn't want to tell anybody. And I
Mhm.
was actually terrified I was going to be fired working in the mental health field at the time that I'm publishing this book. Like, well, I'm going to publish it, but I could lose my job tomorrow, you know. But that
Yeah,
was but that perception that I had was apparently false. I was embraced for it, and I'm very, very thankful for that. And I know that not everybody has that kind of um, reception.
yeah, no, that's true. And as you've described, this has been the UAP experiences has been lifelong for you,
Mhm.
and it sounds like you've really come to terms with it. What has been helpful for you in terms of healing and processed what's happened?
Honestly, the hypnotherapy work with Yvonne has been absolutely essential, because if I had not done that and I continued to stay in a traumatized state, I would not be able to, talk about it. I would not be able to work through it. I would not be able to embrace the things that I am being taught, through this contact. And there's a lot of information and things that I have learned through these entities, because of these entities. And I've learned so much about myself, but I kind of forgot what the question was as I walked around in a circle there.
Just what's been helpful for you in terms of
Ah,
healing
yeah.
what's
Oh,
happened?
yeah. Definitely number one was the hypnotherapy. That was key. And then after that, being able to find people who have also, I'm not going to say really suffered with this, but who have also experienced these things, and coming together in support groups and things like that, I think is also absolutely essential.
Well, and of course, and you're in a unique position as a mental health professional that we know that being validated and supported through any adverse experience is imperative to healing and processing things that happen to us.
Right, right. And then I guess the follow up to that is being able to help those who are just realizing, what is going on, and being able to come to terms with it themselves, and recognizing that, yes, I am a contactee, and being able to give back in that manner has also been very, very helpful.
And how have you found those people, or how have they found you?
Oftentimes word of mouth, or they are in a support group that I happen to follow, and just being able to reassure them that, the feelings that they have is pretty normal, or, giving different resources, or if they come to me. Um, I have also done a lot of training in hypnosis, so I do have clinical hypnosis under my belt to help with regressions myself now. And so being able to do that feels really, really important.
Yeah, no, for sure. Um, what do you think as a professional yourself that like the medical or mental health communities and professionals need to know?
I think that, as everybody is going to now be coming to terms with the fact that we are not alone on this planet, as it has been revealed by the government, and it continues to be revealed by like Harvard and other major studies coming forward to say, yes, this is happening. They're going to have to like sit and bite the bullet and say, okay, this is real. This is real, and people are being impacted. We can no longer stigmatize. We can no longer, categorize as ill these people that are having these experiences, and coming together and probably doing seminars and things like that so they can sit and fully hear out these, the symptoms, the struggles, the issues that come about due to contact.
Yeah, because I think awareness is key, and just the more awareness, and then of course knowledge, then people will start to realize, like say this, we are not alone, and there is more going on, and people don't have to have the giggle factor when talking about this,
Right. That or the horror factor,
or the
the
horror factor.
shock. Yeah.
Yeah,
Shock and awe is a lot of, what you're going to see on TV and hear in a lot of podcasts and things like that. And having done so many of those podcasts, I've decided, I'm not going to do that anymore. But in this side of things, how do we help the people? How do we work through this? How do we take it seriously? I'm going to be right there to help support in whatever way I can.
yeah. No, and that's actually a goal that at UAP MED that we're trying to help foster. Because yeah, it's a really incredible time to be witness to all of this. But of course, there have been people that have struggled with this for forever, and have had to live in the shadows and suffer.
Right. Because they'll be seen as crazy.
Yeah,
Be singled out, shunned, and oh yeah.
And I would imagine that there are many mental health professionals that would say, you know what, we have a medication for that will help you, and you're which is unfortunate. So
Right. And I think it's interesting that it was mental health professionals that kind of stumbled upon these similarities in the stories, like John Mack and I can't think of the other guy's name that just was there and now it's gone, but being able to hear the different stories as regressions are happening, just thinking they're going back to heal like an abuse or something, and coming up with abduction stories, and then person after person after person having the similar experiences and injuries and things like that, and just to realize like, oh gosh, this is happening. And that was back in the 60s when this all started to come out.
Yeah, that's true.
But now it's like validating truth through the government and everything. So
well, that's true. I mean, it doesn't really get much more legitimate than that when you have the government, although I'm sure there's more to be revealed there.
Oh, I'm sure.
And how does this affect, like you mentioned, your children and being experiencers? How does this affect your family life?
Well, around here we just see it as a Tuesday. We know things are going to be strange here, but this is not. This is I happen to be in a unique situation where my husband is very attuned and understands contact, but my children have had a hard time with it, as I've talked about it through the years, and they've felt really uncomfortable. And then, coming to me with the strange experiences that they have had, and like, oh, let me just take photographs, and them feeling like I'm, I don't know how to necessarily say, like jumping too far into it, like you're just being weird, mom. I just got this funny bruise. Yeah, but you had that bruise and that dream, so that tells me something, But over time, they have come to me and said, okay, you know how you said that one thing? Well, I think you're right, and it's true, and I'm having those experiences too. So being able to support them as they're going through it, but I'm not going to say it's been easy.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah. And it sounds like you just kind of let it unfold as it needs to, and help them as it blossoms.
Right.
Yeah.
I think my father has had a harder time with it. I remember him, I think he told my brother, he didn't say to me, but he said, I wish he had talked to me about some of these things before I published. And I didn't even occur to me to do so. But upon talking to him later, I just received even more confirmation and more information about, the things that have happened in my family. And so kind of do wish I had talked to him before I published, because I could have put more in there.
Yeah.
Um, but it is a strain. And I was really nervous to have him read my book after I published.
How did you respond?
He was hesitant. He thought it was good, but he also thought I was being really silly with the whole thing. Like, I can't believe you've taken it this far. Like, and I've talked to him throughout the years, like, really, this stuff is going on with my dad. I don't know if you believe me or not, but it's happening. And so with the publishing of the book is just like out there, and he can no longer deny it. And so many of my experiences involve like my niece, and I have to like ask permission. Can I talk about this that happened? Because I do the shows, and I am out there, and some of the things that have happened are extremely significant in the understanding of what these beings are trying to do. So asking my brother, can I talk about your daughter? Is hard. And then
A lot of
asking my cousins,
boundaries.
what have you gone through?
Yeah, no, definitely there'd have to be respect for boundaries, that you wouldn't have to consider in other situations.
Right.
Huh. And you mentioned that, for you living where you do in Roswell, that this is more commonplace and maybe there's more acceptance. Um, what advice would you give someone that doesn't live somewhere like that, or like myself that lives in the very conservative Midwest, where the giggle factor would be inevitable in mentioning something like this?
I am going to suggest going straight to the internet and finding groups of people that are like-minded that way. That way you don't have to worry about like talking in front of people who may be neighbors and who may be judgmental.
Yeah,
Finding security in a group of like-minded people, even anonymously or with anonymity as you can on the internet, can be helpful as you gain reassurance and validation, and knowing that, feeling okay within yourself, because being authentic is really important, I think, in all of these things. And it's hard for us where we're putting on a mask and pretending to be somebody we're not. um, but we're going to have that reassurance and support behind us as we move forward and start talking to those people a little bit closer to home.
hmm yeah, because I imagine that there's plenty of people around the world that live in more isolated pockets where they don't have people to reach out to or people they feel comfortable speaking with. So going online could be a good option.
Right.
Hmm. Well, Erin, do you have any last minute thoughts or anything you feel might be important for other experiencers or mental health professionals to know today?
I'm not necessarily sure there's anything else. I think that being able to just speak about these things and how important it is direly important to me. And I feel like we've covered a lot,
Yeah,
just in a short span of time.
yeah, no. Well, greatly appreciate your time and your story today. And as a mental health professional, I'm just looking to learn as much as I can. So I greatly appreciate your sharing and
Absolutely.
your time.
Do you have any other questions? Anything that popped up while we were talking?
Um, you mentioned hypnosis. Any other forms of treatment that you have found that have been helpful?
I have not gone through any others, honestly. Not outside of like group support and hypnosis itself. I've not tried EMDR. I've done some medications and things like that to reduce anxiety,
Sure.
um, and things like that. But no, not really.
Yeah, EMDR would be the only one that comes to mind, which would make
Hmm.
sense. Anyone with trauma,
Hmm.
it wouldn't have to be related to UAP or not, but I could see where very beneficial. And I'd be interested if anyone is using that as a form of helping those experiencers. I have not heard,
Right.
but the
I
only
haven't
form,
either, but yeah,
yeah,
makes me curious.
yeah, the only treatment I hear of is the hypnosis,
Mhm.
and I medication makes sense too because you're going to have a lot of anxiety and trouble sleeping and things like that. But
Right. But
yeah,
even
no,
so, when you go in, you don't tell them why you are having those issues oftentimes. So, I mean, doctors are going to have to be kind of prepared for those kinds of things. You can understand if somebody was, in a domestic violence situation, or they were in a terrible car crash, or they lost somebody to a tragic accident or anything like that, it would be like, oh gosh, well, you probably have PTSD, so let's give you these medications to help those symptoms. But
right.
when you go in and say, yeah, I was abducted by aliens last night and these awful things happened, I don't think the reaction is going to be the same. And so being able to work with those professionals to just treat it as any other trauma is going to be extremely important.
Oh, I agree. And I work with a group of physicians, and I imagine a patient coming in and trying to share, like, oh, I've been having these UAP encounters and such, and I feel like they would call me and say, I think we have someone who's psychotic, or and I just think that would be the immediate go-to,
Right.
and I think
But
that's
and the truth is they may be psychotic, but they also mean a
the
lot.
no,
And
that you're
so, yeah.
that may be true, but I think obviously with if you, by working with them, that could be teased out and
Mhm.
see if it's a real issue for them or not. But and I think because it isn't as commonplace for a lot of reasons, largely due to people not willing to speak about it, that physicians in particular and others just don't have they don't have that same patient that comes through the door. Like they see several people with car accidents or domestic violence or all the other situations. But hopefully, as we go on here and bring more awareness and education, that it will be more commonplace and certainly um, helpful for those that are in need of the support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an exciting time actually right now.
It really is. Well, yeah, well, I think that's all I have for you. And
Awesome.
I know you've had a busy weekend. You've got some
Mhm.
fires going on.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Got it.
Ruidoso is highly devastated, and we have many, many displaced people in here in town, thousands actually, with who have lost their homes,
Oh my.
um, and the energy is very heavy.
Oh, well, well, hang in there. And again, thank you for your time and you take good care.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Susan.
You bet. Bye, Erin.
Bye bye.